The morning air in Pinecrest Mountains was sharp and still, heavy with mist that rolled in like a tide of ghosts. Fir trees lined the narrow road that snaked along the cliffside, their branches brushing the sky like brittle fingers. Below, the valley disappeared into a fog so thick it swallowed sound. Grant Wexler's luxury SUV cut through the silence, the tires crunching on gravel as it eased to a stop near a scenic overlook. Scenic, if anyone was there to appreciate it. But only 3 souls stepped out that morning, 2 human, 1 canine, and only 2 would walk away. Ellie Wexler sat in her wheelchair beside the open car door, bundled in a pale yellow coat. Her soft brown eyes blinked slowly as she took in the trees, the cliffs, the yawning fog below. She was 6, but already wore the quiet of someone who'd seen more than she should have. Ranger, the German shepherd who hadn't left her side since her mother's funeral, jumped out next. His tail wagged briefly as he sniffed the air, then brushed gently against Ellie's arm before trotting ahead. Grant followed last, pulling off leather gloves as he glanced around, jaw tight. He was a tall man in his 40s, clean-cut and dressed in an expensive hiking vest he had no intention of getting dirty. He walked behind Ellie's wheelchair, pushing her gently forward, his tone laced with sugary affection. "Breathtaking, isn't it, sweetheart?" he said. "Just you, me, and nature." Ellie didn't answer. She kept her eyes on Ranger, who was chasing a squirrel into the brush, tail high and alert. She tightened her fingers on the armrests of her chair. Grant crouched beside her, his smile a little too stiff. "You know," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, "your mom always said this was her favorite place. She wanted you to see it." Ellie looked at him, then looked down at her lap. Something in her body tensed. Ranger barked from a distance, then another bark, sharper this time, and then silence. The dog had chased the squirrel farther than Grant expected. Good. He stood up. "You know I love you, right?" he said flatly, almost like a line he had to get through. Ellie blinked at him, and then, before she could ask anything, before she could even brace herself, Grant took 2 firm steps behind the chair and shoved. The wheelchair lurched forward. Ellie gasped. Her small hands gripped the armrests, but the rocky path offered no resistance. Her scream was swallowed by the mist as the chair tumbled toward the edge. But fate had a strange way of intervening. The front wheels of the chair caught on a jagged root just before the cliff's edge, throwing Ellie forward. She tumbled out, sliding violently down the slope, her coat snagging on rocks and brambles. Finally, her body slammed into a narrow ledge, a cruel miracle. She came to rest, face down, unconscious, perched above hundreds of feet of empty air. Ranger came bursting from the trees seconds later, barking wildly. He raced to the cliff and saw her, just barely, her tiny form caught in the gray. Without hesitation, he leapt down, claws scrabbling for purchase. The first rocks gave way. He slipped, landed hard on his side, yelped, but kept going. Blood matted the fur on his legs, but he pushed forward, finding a narrow path and working his way down toward her. Grant stood at the top, panting, heart pounding. He stared down, saw nothing through the fog. His lips pressed into a hard line. It was done. He turned, got back in the car, and drove away. Down on the ledge, Ranger reached Ellie. He licked her cheek, whimpered, then pressed his body against hers, sharing his warmth. Her eyes fluttered, barely open. She whispered something, maybe his name. The cold crept in fast, but Ranger refused to sleep. He lay there, a silent sentinel, his eyes wide and watchful. Night fell like a curtain of ice. Hours passed. The temperature dropped below freezing. At one point, a low growl pierced the dark. A gray wolf padded out from the trees above, drawn by the scent of blood and weakness. Its eyes glinted, yellow and cruel. Ranger stood, legs trembling, and growled back, low and feral. The wolf descended, lips curled. They collided. The fight was desperate, fur, teeth, blood. Ranger fought with a fury he hadn't known he possessed. He protected Ellie like she was his pup, slashing and barking and refusing to let go. The wolf finally limped off into the trees, leaving a trail of crimson behind. Ranger collapsed beside Ellie again, breathing hard, licking the wound on his side. The stars came out, cold and indifferent. Ellie shivered beneath him, her little hand finding the fur on his chest. He didn't move all night. He couldn't. He was all she had. And somehow, as the sun began to rise and the mist turned a soft pink, Ranger's ears perked at the distant crunch of boots on gravel. Help was coming, but not from the man who had claimed to love her. From someone else, someone who would listen, someone who believed in second chances. Marina Carter had always trusted her instincts, and that morning, they screamed at her before she even reached the trail. She was jogging down the slope behind her property with a thermos of coffee in one hand and her shepherd mix, Boone, trotting beside her. The fog was thinner now, sun starting to break through in golden shards. Birds chirped cautiously and the world seemed almost normal, until Boone stopped dead, ears pinned, nose flaring. "What is it, boy?" she asked, scanning the ravine. Boone let out a short, sharp bark and tore through the underbrush. Marina followed, branches whipping against her arms as she pushed through. She stumbled onto the ridge and froze. There, 20 feet below, on a narrow ledge, lay a crumpled child, and a dog draped over her like a blanket, bloody and still. Her heart dropped. "Oh my God," she breathed, dropping the thermos and reaching for her phone. "Hang on, baby, I'm coming." She called search and rescue first, then the sheriff's office. But she didn't wait. With a rope from her emergency pack and help from Boone, she made her way slowly, carefully down the rocks. Her arms burned, her hands shook, but she reached them. The dog, massive, a German shepherd, lifted his head weakly and growled once, protective even in pain. "It's okay," Marina whispered, tears springing to her eyes. "I'm here to help." Ellie was unconscious, lips blue, cheeks scratched raw. Marina checked her pulse, thin but there. She wrapped the child in her jacket and tied the rope around her own waist, ready for the slow, grueling climb back up. Hours later, Ellie lay bundled in Marina's guest bedroom, pale and barely responsive. Ranger curled at the foot of the bed, bandaged from a hastily cleaned gash and bruises along his ribs. Boone sat in the hallway, watching everything with quiet intensity. Marina's husband, John, hovered nearby with a cup of tea in one hand and 100 questions in his eyes. "They said no Amber Alert's been issued," he murmured. "No missing kid reported." Marina sat beside the bed, brushing Ellie's hair from her forehead. She hasn't spoken a word, not one. John nodded toward the dog, but he hasn't left her side. "He saved her life," Marina said quietly. "He fought something. Wolf, maybe. He's torn up." She was lucky. Marina looked at the bruises on Ellie's wrists, the dirt under her nails, the raw fear still lingering behind her shut eyes. "No," she said. "She was targeted." That night, Ellie finally stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, and when she opened them, Marina was there, a soft smile on her face. "Hi there," Marina said gently. "You're safe now, sweetie. My name's Marina. This is my home. You've been asleep for a while." Ellie blinked slowly, then her lips parted. "Ranger." The shepherd lifted his head, ears flicking at the sound of his name. He nudged closer, laying his chin on her leg. Ellie's small hand found his fur. "Is he okay?" she whispered. "He is," Marina said, relief washing through her. "Thanks to you, and thanks to him." Ellie didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just closed her eyes again and held tighter to the dog. In the days that followed, Marina pieced together what she could. Ellie wouldn't say much, only that her name was Ellie Wexler. Her mother had died last year. Her dad had taken her for a trip, and then nothing. Her hands trembled when she tried to speak about it, but the bruises spoke volumes. John did some digging, calling in a few favors from his time on the local force. There was no death record filed for Ellie, no custody battle, just a quiet file. Grant Wexler, real estate mogul, known for cutting corners and making enemies. His wife, Elena, had died in a car accident that some whispered wasn't an accident at all. No one had heard from Ellie since. And now, here she was, abandoned in the woods, left for dead, and rescued by her dog. Marina knew she had to be careful. The wrong move could send Ellie right back into the hands of the man who'd tried to kill her. So she kept her mouth shut. She waited. She made Ellie feel safe. And slowly, the girl opened up. It started with tiny things, feeding Boone, brushing Ranger's coat. Then came the pictures. Marina gave Ellie a sketch pad, and she filled it with drawings, trees, cliffs, a dog standing guard, a little girl crying at the edge. But one drawing chilled Marina to her core. A man's face, cold and square-jawed, pushing the wheelchair. Ellie didn't label him. She didn't need to. One evening, as a storm rolled in and thunder echoed through the pines, Ellie crept into the living room where Marina sat reading. Ranger followed close behind. "Do I have to go back?" Ellie asked quietly. Marina set her book down. "Back where, honey?" "To him." Marina took a deep breath. "No, sweetheart, not if I can help it." Ellie nodded, then leaned into her, burying her face in Marina's sweater. The floodgates finally opened. Sobs tore from her chest. Weeks, maybe months of silent fear unleashed. Ranger nuzzled her gently, a low whine in his throat. John stood in the hallway, watching. "We need to talk to the sheriff," he said. And they would. But first, they would give this little girl the one thing she'd never really had. A place she could call home. The sun rose over whispering pines with a deceptive calm. Mist clung to the fields, and dew blanketed the porch steps of the Carter home. Inside, life had begun to settle into a fragile rhythm. Ellie still barely spoke, but she no longer flinched at every creak in the floor. She'd started setting the table for breakfast, brushing Ranger's coat with deliberate tenderness, and sleeping through most nights, though never without the dog curled up beside her. Still, the silence carried weight, and Marina knew better than to think the storm had passed. Sheriff Dale Booker arrived just after lunch one Tuesday. He was a man of weathered kindness, his silver mustache more expressive than most faces. He held his hat in one hand and a leather-bound notepad in the other. "I came as soon as I could," he said, eyeing the front door before glancing back at Marina. "John says you've got a girl who might be in danger?" "She is," Marina said. "But she's scared to talk. She draws it instead." Ellie peeked from behind the hallway wall, her little hand resting gently on Ranger's shoulder. The German shepherd stood like a sentinel, eyes sharp, tail low. Booker gave a gentle nod. "Hey there, Ellie. I'm Dale. I'm the sheriff around here, but I'm mostly just someone who listens real good." She didn't respond, just stared, then ducked behind the wall again. "She trusts Ranger," Marina offered, "and us, but she's still trapped in whatever happened." Booker leaned back, exhaling. "No missing persons report, no record of custody transfer. No one's even looking for her." "That's because the one who tried to get rid of her," Marina said, lowering her voice, doesn't want her found. Booker raised a brow. You saying her father tried to kill her? I'm not guessing, Dale. I'm saying it. The sheriff rubbed his jaw. That's a hell of an accusation. Marina handed him a drawing Ellie had left on the kitchen table that morning. In it, the same man appeared again, Grant Wexler's hard features inked in heavy black strokes. Standing beside a cliff, a child in a wheelchair tipped forward. Ranger was mid-leap in the air behind them. Booker stared at it for a long time. That's not imagination, he finally said. That's a memory. Marina nodded. And we need to protect her before he comes back to erase it. Meanwhile, across town, the very man they feared was already making his move. Grant Wexler stood in his private office on the top floor of Wexler Properties, his eyes cold as he tapped his fingers against his mahogany desk. On the screen before him was a paused frame from a local trail cam. A blurry figure, small, being carried in the arms of a woman with dark hair. A dog trailing close behind. The text from an unlisted number flashed beneath it. She's alive, and she's not alone. Grant's jaw tensed. You told me it was done. The voice on the phone was flat, emotionless. You said she wouldn't survive. She did. I paid you to make this problem disappear. Now it's back on my doorstep. I'll handle it, the voice said, but you need to clean up the rest. Grant's gaze drifted to the corner of the room, where a suitcase lay half-packed with burner phones, encrypted drives, and a folder marked Cascade Holdings. His empire was built on shifting sand, and Ellie, sweet, quiet Ellie, had just become the earthquake. Back at the Carter home, Ellie sat beside Ranger on the porch swing, a sketch pad balanced on her knees. She didn't hear Marina come up behind her until she spoke. You're really good at that, you know. Ellie glanced up, her eyes soft but cautious. That dog in your picture, Marina said, pointing to a new drawing. That's Ranger, right? Ellie nodded slowly. And the girl? Is that you? Another nod. Marina sat beside her, leaving space. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, but I just want you to know. If someone hurt you, they won't get another chance. Not while you're here. Ellie swallowed, lips trembling. He said I didn't matter anymore. Who did, honey? Ellie's eyes welled with tears. Daddy? A pause. He pushed me. Said Mommy wasn't here to protect me anymore. Said I was just a liability. Marina felt her heart crack, piece by piece. But Ranger wouldn't let go, Ellie whispered. He grabbed my hoodie, pulled me away from the edge. That's how you survived? Marina asked. Ellie nodded. He stayed all night. That night, Marina and John sat in their living room, staring at a stack of paperwork Dale had dropped off. Guardianship forms, protective custody, and a draft order for a restraining warrant. You think Wexler's going to come looking? John asked. Marina didn't answer right away. She watched through the window as Ranger paced the fence line, tail up, nose to the wind. I think, she said slowly, he already is. 3 days later, at 2:16 a.m., Boone let out a growl that turned into a snarl. Marina jolted awake, heart pounding. John was already up, grabbing the shotgun from the hall closet. Outside, a truck's engine idled for a moment, then shut off. They stepped onto the porch just in time to see the silhouette of a man disappear into the trees. Ranger, who had been lying next to Ellie's bed, bolted past them, barking with rage. Call Booker, John said, already halfway down the steps. And inside, Ellie curled under her blanket, gripping Ranger's collar tight, eyes wide with fear, but no longer paralyzed. I saw him, she whispered. Who? Marina asked, kneeling beside her. She looked Marina dead in the eye. My dad. The Carter household had shifted into a state of quiet vigilance. The locks on every door had been checked and doubled. Motion lights flickered on the porch. Ranger never left Ellie's side. Not when she brushed her teeth, not when she played in the backyard. Not even when she sat on the couch drawing with her headphones in. He slept by her bed with one eye open, ears twitching at every sound. Sheriff Booker had stepped up patrols, circling the area day and night. But it was never enough, not when you were dealing with someone like Grant Wexler. That morning, Marina found Ellie in the kitchen, flipping through a worn storybook with Ranger's chin resting on her lap. The girl looked up with a calmness that only surfaced when she felt completely safe. "He's still out there, isn't he?" she asked, almost like she was asking about the weather. Marina set down a tray of eggs and toast and nodded. "Yes, sweetie, but we're doing everything we can to keep you safe." Ellie didn't respond right away. She stared at her food for a moment, then whispered, "He's angry." "He's always angry when things don't go his way." Marina sat beside her. "Do you remember what made him angry last time?" Ellie nodded slowly. "He said I ruined things, that Mom was gone because of me, that I made him look weak." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "He called me a mistake." Marina clenched her jaw. "You are not a mistake, Ellie. You are brave and kind and stronger than he'll ever be." Outside, Ranger let out a low growl and trotted to the front window. Marina followed him, heart tightening. Sheriff Booker's cruiser was in the driveway again, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman with sharp eyes and tired shoulders, clutching a large envelope under one arm. "Court documents," Booker said once they were inside. "Emergency custody hearing is scheduled for Friday. The judge moved fast, and I found you someone." He gestured to the woman beside him. "This is Maya Torres, child advocate with the state. She's here to make sure Ellie's voice gets heard." Maya knelt to Ellie's level. "Hi, Ellie. I'm not here to take you anywhere. I just want to help people understand your story, your way. Is that okay?" Ellie glanced at Ranger, then gave a small nod. That night, while Ellie slept, Marina and John sat at the kitchen table going over the documents. The adoption forms, witness affidavits, a photo of Ellie and Ranger, taken the day after they found her, included in the file. "She's ours in every way but paper," John said softly. "She deserves stability," Marina added. "Not just love, but a life without fear." John reached for her hand. "We'll get her there." But just as hope began to settle, darkness struck again. At 3:27 a.m., the power went out. Not a flicker, not a surge. It was like the house had been yanked from the grid. Marina grabbed her phone, but there was no signal. John, already out of bed, pulled the shotgun from under the dresser. Ranger was a blur, teeth bared, bolting toward the front door. "Stay with Ellie," John called over his shoulder as he vanished into the darkness. Marina ran to Ellie's room. The little girl was sitting up in bed, wide-eyed, clutching her stuffed bear and Ranger's leash. "Mommy?" she whispered. "No, baby," Marina said gently, wrapping her arms around her. "Just me. I'm here." Outside, something crashed, then silence, then footsteps. Ranger lunged for the door just as it creaked open. But it wasn't John, it was Grant. His face appeared in the doorway like a nightmare come to life. Calm, calculated, and colder than ice. "Hello, sweetheart," he said. Marina moved between him and Ellie, heart hammering. "Get out." "You've been filling her head with lies," he sneered. "She belongs with me." Ellie whimpered and clung to Marina. Grant took a step forward, then stopped. Ranger was between them now, teeth bared, a low, primal growl rumbling from his chest. "I'll shoot him," Grant warned, pulling something from his coat. A pistol. "You won't get the chance." John's voice came from behind, calm and steely. Grant spun, just as the butt of John's shotgun slammed into his wrist, sending the pistol clattering to the floor. They struggled for a beat until Ranger lunged, not with fangs but force. He drove into Grant's side like a freight train, knocking him to the ground. Sirens pierced the night seconds later. Booker had been patrolling. Within moments, the house filled with red and blue lights, and Grant Wexler was face down in the dirt, cuffs snapping tight around his wrists. "I want my daughter," he roared as he was dragged to the cruiser. Booker didn't flinch. "You had your chance, Grant, and you threw it off a cliff." By sunrise, the power was restored. Ellie, still shaken, sat on the porch swing with Ranger's head in her lap. "Is it over?" she asked Marina. Marina brushed a hand through her hair. "Almost. One more step." 2 days later, in a quiet courthouse outside of Cascade, Ellie took the stand. She wore a blue dress and held Ranger's leash like a lifeline. Her voice was soft but steady as she told the judge what her father had done. What he said, what Ranger saved her from. And when it was over, she didn't look at Grant once. Not even when he was led from the room in silence, sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder and child endangerment. Outside the courthouse, Ellie leaned against Marina, face pressed into her side. "You're safe now," Marina whispered, "and you're never going back." Ranger gave a soft bark, almost like agreement. Ellie smiled, not a full smile, not yet, but the kind that meant healing had begun. Spring had finally come to Cascade, Oregon, and with it, a sense of hope that had long been absent from the Carter family farm. The trees wore their new green coats. The creek behind the barn sang a little louder, and for the first time in months, Ellie Carter, officially Ellie Carter now, woke up not with fear, but with purpose. The day the adoption papers were signed, the judge asked Ellie if she wanted to keep her last name. She shook her head and turned to Marina and John. "I want your name," she whispered, "because you're my real family." That moment, simple and quiet, changed everything. Back at the farm, change continued to blossom like the wildflowers in the pasture. The once silent barn now echoed with barks, giggles, and the occasional crash of a paint can. The story of Ellie and Ranger had caught the attention of not only the local community, but people across the state. Letters poured in, some from parents of children with trauma, some from veterans, and some from people who just wanted to say, "Thank you for giving me hope." Marina, always one to act with her heart, couldn't ignore the call. One morning, she placed a blueprint on the kitchen table. "I think we should start something," she told John. "Something permanent. For kids like Ellie, for dogs like Ranger." John raised an eyebrow. "You mean like a rescue?" "More than that," Marina said. "A place where healing goes both ways. Where kids and dogs can learn to trust again. Where no one is left behind." They called it the Brave Ones Project, after something Ellie had whispered to Ranger once, during a thunderstorm. "Only brave ones stay," she'd said, curling beside him in the dark. And you stayed. Within weeks, volunteers showed up. Veterinary students, retired dog trainers, a school counselor who offered to run free group therapy once a week. The barn was renovated to include heated stalls and a new fenced play yard. Inside the farmhouse, Marina cleared out the guest room to make space for an office and therapy nook. Ranger, graying around the muzzle but still strong and alert, was the program's heart. He greeted every visitor at the gate, his steady presence a comfort to anxious children. Ellie made sure he wore his official ambassador dog bandana at every event. Their first group included 3 children. Micah, 8, who hadn't spoken since his father was arrested for abuse. Jasmine, 10, whose nightmares kept her up most nights. And Diego, a shy boy who flinched at sudden noises. Each was paired with a rescue dog, dogs with their own bruised pasts, and somehow the broken pieces fit together. Micah found his voice while brushing Ranger. He started humming, then whispering stories, until one day he said, loud and clear, "Ranger reminds me of the dog I used to have. He didn't leave either." Jasmine stopped waking up, screaming when she began sleeping beside a golden retriever named Luna. "She doesn't let the monsters in," Jasmine told Marina with a sleepy smile. Diego took his first confident steps across the field with his hand on the back of a one-eyed German shepherd named Max. "He's not scared," Diego said, "so maybe I don't have to be." Ellie watched all this with quiet pride. She had become something of a leader among the kids, not because she tried to be, but because they trusted her. She knew what it was like to feel discarded. She knew how powerful it was to be seen, to be loved. One afternoon, Ellie sat with Ranger under the old sycamore tree by the creek. She traced shapes in the dirt, her legs swinging as Ranger rested his head in her lap. "Do you think my dad ever cared?" she asked. Marina, who'd quietly joined her, sat down beside them. "I don't know, sweet girl. Some people are too broken to care for others, but that doesn't make you any less worthy of love." Ellie nodded, her eyes still on the dirt. "I'm not scared of him anymore." Marina kissed the top of her head. "That's because you're brave. Braver than most grown-ups I know." That summer, the Brave Ones Project held its first open house. Over 200 people came, families, neighbors, local shelters, and even a few former foster kids now grown. Ellie gave a short speech, clutching Ranger's leash like a lifeline. "I used to think I was trash," she said, her voice shaking but sure. "That nobody wanted me, but Ranger did, and so did Marina and John. And now we want to help other kids feel what I feel, safe, loved, brave." The crowd gave her a standing ovation. Someone snapped a photo of her and Ranger standing side by side, eyes shining. It would later become the cover of the nonprofit's brochure. As the sun set that evening, Ellie climbed into bed, Ranger curling beside her. She ran her fingers through his fur, whispering, "We did good, didn't we?" Ranger thumped his tail once, slow and certain. And in that quiet room, on that safe little farm in Cascade, the world exhaled. Not perfect, not painless, but new. A new name, a new beginning. And it was only just the start.